In today's episode, I would like to go through some more complex arguments. So if you don't know anything about truth tables, then do check out this video instead, where I went through the basics. So now, let's take this argument for an example. P, if and only if Q. P or R, not Q, therefore R. Just looking at it like this is tough, but as always, let's make it a bit more concrete. Let's say that P means come over to my place, Q means I will give you a hamburger, and R means I will give you fries. So this argument can be translated to this. If and only if you come over to my place will I give you a hamburger. You come over to my place, or I will give you fries. I did not give you a hamburger, therefore I gave you fries. Is this argument valid? It sounds like it, right? But let's check our truth table to be sure. In this argument we have 3 variables, right? So here we need 8 rows. Remember, the number of rows is calculated by 2 to the power of the number of variables we're dealing with. And as always, we want to do a fully exhaustive truth evaluation. We begin by filling out underneath P, true, 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 false, 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 false. Then under Q, true, true, false, false, true, true, false, false. And lastly, under R, true, false, true, false, true, false, etc. There is a way to be more systematic when filling out these initial values by counting in binary, but I believe one can make an entire video about that subject. But I'll leave a link down below if you want to know more about that. Good, so now we then fill out the individual premises of the argument. Let's begin with the simplest one. Not Q. This one is simple since it's only the reverse value of Q. Then we have P if and only if Q. Now, here it can be a little bit tricky since we need to remember the truth table for biconditional while at the same time compare the already existing rows with each other. And the biconditional is true only when all of the variables have the same truth value. So here we see that P and Q have the same, hence the biconditional is true. And then here, true as well. But then, here they differ. So false, then false, 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 true, right? And lastly, true. Cool. Then we move on to P or R. Same thing here, we need to remember the truth table for disjunction while we compare the rows underneath P and R. And a disjunction is only false when all of the disjuncts are false. So here it should be true, 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 then false, here, right? Then true and false. Nice. Now we have filled out all the truth values. Let's figure out whether it is valid or not. So here we need to find one row where all the premises are true and where the conclusion is true as well. And there cannot also be a row where the premises are true and the conclusion is false at the same time. So let's begin with not Q. It's true in these rows. Then P, if and only if Q, is true in these places. And then we have P or R, and it is true everywhere except for here and here. And as you can see, here on this row, all the premises are true at the same time as the conclusion is true. And we cannot find a row where the premises are true and the conclusion is false at the same time. Sweet! Now we know that the argument is valid, right? Let's do another one. So here we have an argument. If it is not the case that P and Q, then R or Q. Not P, not Q, therefore R. The translation of this argument could be something like this. If it is not the case that you came over to my place and that I gave you a hamburger, then it is the case that I gave you fries or a hamburger. You did not come over to my place. I did not give you a hamburger. Therefore, I gave you fries. Same thing here. 3 variables, so we have already done the groundwork. So if we begin with the simple premises here, they are only negations, so we can simply reverse their truth value. But the first premise here is a bit more complex. How do we go about in writing the truth table here? Where should we even begin? Well, whenever we have a complex premise like this one, we always begin with the operator that possesses the smallest scope. In other words, the operator that affects the least amount of variables and operators. And then we work ourselves up to the operator with the second to smallest scope, and then the third, etc., etc., until we've reached the main operator. So first we take the 2 operators that affects 2 variables. Let's begin with this one, a conjunction, which is only true when all of the variables are true. So here we compare it with the truth value below P and Q. So here we write true, true, false, 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 and false. Then here we have a disjunction between R and Q. So here it is true, 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 false, true, 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 and false. Good. Now let's take the negation. As always, the negation reverses the truth value, and it is the truth value below the conjunction in this case. Good. Now we move on to the main operator in this premise, which is the material conditional, for it affects the whole premise, and it is false only when the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. So here we need to compare the truth value below the negation sign with the disjunction sign. I know, a bit tedious, but we're almost done. So this one is true, 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 false, true, 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 and false. Now, just like before, we need to find a row where all the premises are true and where the conclusion is true as well. And as you can see here in scenario 7, the premises are all true and the conclusion is true as well. We cannot find a row where all the premises are true while the conclusion is false at the same time. Hence, the argument is valid. As you can see, writing complex truth tables with more than 2 variables already becomes a bit tedious. Just imagine if we need 32 rows or even 64. Yeah. And it is at that point where truth tables become insufficient in my opinion, and one should instead utilize natural deduction or logical proofs. In my opinion, when you're doing truth tables, you're not really doing logic or thinking logically. In a way, you are just doing a mechanized work, comparing values with each other. So if you really want to improve your logical thinking, I would suggest to learn and practice natural deduction. But I would say that formal proofs like that is beyond the basics of logic. That is big brain logic, and it takes a lot of practice. At least it did so for me. But I would love to make a series on natural deduction here on this channel, but that would require a lot of time for me. So if you would like to see that, please leave a comment down below. But anyways, make sure to subscribe if you want to know more about logic and philosophy in the future. Take care until the next one.